What is cinema? For years, decades even, I've scoured the earth and the universe as a whole to find the answer to this question. And I have to say, after eons of what feels like endless searching, I have finally found the answer to the question, what is cinema?
Move, bitch, get out of my way. Move, bitch, get out of my way.
I have a pretty big history when it comes to Transformers. I loved having the toys as a kid, and every time that I would watch the show with my dad, I really loved it. I have some very fond memories of the show, including some very specific storylines and arcs that I remember to this day. So, going into this rewatch of Transformers things, I was interested to see how I would feel. I already knew my opinion on some of these movies, but I did want to get a fresher look, and I'm excited that I did because this was a fun thing to do, and I've been wanting to make a video on these films for a while, mainly because they're not that good and they get made fun of a lot, and for very good reasons, but I just kind of wanted to give my take on them as someone who is nostalgic for these films and for the brand as a whole. So for this, I'm going to be going through all 7 Transformers movies, 1 animated and 6 live action, and I'm going to be talking about my thoughts on them and the franchise as a whole. I could make an entire video on the cartoon series if I ever rewatch that, which could be fun, but for now I'm sticking strictly to the films. One starting in 1986 and then ending in 2018 over that huge span of time. So without further ado, let's start with the first Transformers movie. Transformers, the movie, is a 1986 animated feature film that I first saw when I was like 6. Yeah, I have a lot of nostalgia for this film. I used to watch the old cartoon a lot with my dad, and I would always be excited when we got to this part of the series because I really loved this movie. It takes place in the midway point of the first 4 seasons, I think. It takes place after season 2, but before season 3, and I believe there's only like 4 seasons of the original cartoon, and it was just a really cool movie. Looking back on it, like several years later, I'm, interested in how the movie came about more than the movie itself. I think that it's a really nice product of the times. It is the most 1986 animated movie that I could expect to see. It just invokes the feeling of the Transformers cartoon so well, but the animation quality is so much better. As for the story, it's basically just an episode of the show, but like stretched out to an obscene length to be a complete like feature-length film, and that really does hurt it because there are some moments where it really just doesn't need to be going on for as long as it is, and I do feel like there's some moments where they're just doing some random thing on some random planet and I'm not quite invested or at all about what's going on. But there's also some really cool moments where they're fighting Unicron, or a bunch of like cool fights between the Decepticons and Autobots. Optimus's fight against Megatron, including his death, is really dope and probably like a peak part of the film for me. In fact, the beginning of this movie leading up to that is genuinely great, like really fucking good. But the rest of the movie just kind of falls a bit flat until Hot Rod becomes the new leader of the Autobots, which is really cool. And yeah, so I think it's overall a good time. I have a lot of nostalgia for it, so maybe that's clouding it a bit, but I could easily rewatch this. It's super cheesy, but like in the best ways. And yeah, it's really cool. It's just everything great about the cartoon, which itself isn't that great, but everything great about the cartoon piled into one really fun short feature-length animated film. So I would definitely recommend it. The animation's awesome, soundtrack is really cool, and the voice acting is good. It's just a fun movie. However, the fun is only now beginning. I still remember the first time I saw the trailer for this movie, and I was so excited. The wildest thing is the trailer starts so randomly with these two white guys driving into a car dealership, and so when my mom was showing me the trailer all excited, I had no clue what the hell she was so excited about until the trailer really picked up, and I got excited too. I really like this movie. Now, let me preface this by saying this is by no means a great film. In fact, some people could probably argue that this is a pretty bad movie. I would disagree, but again, it's not a great film. I just like this film a lot because of the nostalgia and because I think that when it does what it's trying to do, which is be an action blockbuster based on the Transformers brand, I think it does a really, really great job. It's really solid, and that kind of surprised me going into it, but I did always remember liking this movie, and it's really cool to see how the world building works for it, and it does a lot of really cool things. It started the tradition that the Bay films have where they place the Transformers into history. This time they do by having Sam's great-grandfather find Megatron. Megatron was housed in Hoover Dam, which President Hoover built to hide Transformers. And it's all really, really cool, and the history aspect of it is so cool because it's so grounded in its own reality. And a lot of future films also tie the Transformers to the past, but none of them do it as well as this one, to the point where it doesn't feel like a gimmick or like some dumb plot point. It actually just feels like the story. A Transformer crashed here super early, and they have to stop him, and I really, really like that. The acting is surprisingly good. I think that Shia LaBeouf is really, really solid here. He's a great actor in other things too, but I really enjoy him. And there's some poor line deliveries from multiple people, but like Megan Fox is even okay in this movie. I don't think she was really awful. Nobody else in the rest of the film is amazing or bad. All of the Transformers voice actors were pretty good too. A lot of them I think were returning from the show, so that's really awesome. And yeah, I really think that as far as acting goes, it's pretty exciting and pretty well done. The movie really, really shines with its visual effects. They're simply just so stunning. It's insane that a movie can come out in 2007 and look way better than some of the movies being released today. All of the Transformers look awesome, and you can complain that they're bland and too gray, but I don't mind it. It looks better than what we could have gotten if they'd gone with goofy and colorful designs, which granted future movie Bumblebee does, but I feel like in 2007 it was a bit safer to go with this design to make sure they looked better than more cartoon accurate, because they probably would not have aged well whatsoever. The score is great. I think it's got some awesome songs by Jablonski, but also Linkin Park's songs on it are great too. They got What I've Done, and it's just such a great song, and I really think that it works with the film. They came out around the same time because that was when Linkin Park's album was coming out. The story is probably the biggest issue. Again, I really like how everything is tied to the history of, like, with Hoover Dam and with Megatron and the Arctic Circle, but I do think that there are some major issues with the story, and the film is just a bit too long. You could have shaved a decent amount off. There's also some crude jokes that just aren't funny, and some creepy ass shots by Michael Bay that just don't really gel with the Transformers brand for me. So yeah, overall this is a really, really fun Transformers movie, and yeah, I had a great time rewatching it, and I could easily watch it again. I think that this is probably one of the few that people could look at outside of being Transformers fans and probably like. Unfortunately, I had no clue how downhill it was about to go. This film is awful. This film is so fucking bad that I didn't even rewatch it this past time. My mind is made up on this movie. I don't think I ever need to watch it again, and I don't think I ever will watch it again unless I'm watching it with someone who it's their first time, just so they can see how bad it is. I hated this film as a kid when it came out. I did not like it. There's a lot of problems with this movie, most of which you can just find online. First off, from what I've read, it's shot without a script. Like, they just had like a treatment done and an outline of where they wanted to go and what they wanted to do. And the result of that is a movie that's plot is so razor thin that I could probably poke a hole through it with like dull scissors and it would just go right through it. I cannot stress how little this movie's plot makes sense. They introduce so many things that don't even make sense, that they don't ever bring back. Like, there's this weird sexy human transformer thing that tries to seduce and fuck Sam in college, and there's so many racist jokes, so many, and Devastator has balls.
I am directly below the enemy scrotum.
and it blows my mind. Remember I said I remember specific arcs from the cartoon. Well, one of them from the movie that I talked about in this video is Optimus dies. And they kill Optimus in this movie, but they bring him back with the Matrix of Leadership, which they find in Egypt as they get magically transported there because they find an old Decepticon named Jetfire, and the movie just happens. And then at one point Sam just like almost dies, and then the elders talk to him, and then Megatron's alive again somehow, and I want to die. There's some dumb subplot with him going to college. I've repressed this film. Can I move on, please? You feel cold and lost in desperation. I love this movie. I could talk for hours about how I genuinely don't think this film deserves the shit it gets, or about how it's actually a really fun and well done blockbuster with some actually pretty okay and good writing with a lot of really awesome moments. But that's not what this video is about. This video is about the entirety of the Transformers cinematic universe and not about one specific film that I could talk about for hours. So I will say I genuinely do get why people don't like these movies. I don't even like most of them. But when they work, they really work. And this movie really works for me. I've seen it so much. It's a guilty pleasure, if you want to call it that, and I think it will always continue to be one for me. This movie uses a lot of dope storylines from it, and they don't really do them as poorly as the second movie did Optimus Prime's death. Like in the cartoon, there was a whole arc about how the Decepticons wanted to bring Cybertron to Earth, or there was an arc about how Megatron tricked everyone to think the Autobots were evil, so they had to leave Earth. And all of those things are done in this movie. And yeah, you can say this movie crams a bunch of shit together, but to me, it comes together in the end fairly well. The action scenes are really great. Probably my favorite in the series. I don't know, something just massively improved from the second to this film. The racist jokes are still here, just a lot more dialed down in my opinion. And there's some genuinely funny moments in this movie. Moments that I did not expect to laugh at as hard as I did, and something about this movie just clicks. The music from Linkin Park is really great too. The score itself is awesome. And I use this word a lot in conversation and in some of my videos, but this movie really is just really freaking epic. It is so epic. There's so many banging, awesome moments. The third act is really dope. The use of iridescent in the scene where they're driving into Chicago is so fucking good. I don't know. I wish that I could understand and explain why I love this movie, but it's really hard for me too. The third act is too long, I will say. If this movie were like 20 minutes shorter, I could actually say this is one of my favorite films. But I don't know, it's just such a really fun movie. And for a Transformers movie, it really stands out from the rest of them and just being one that I can consistently rewatch time and time again. And this is probably one of my most unpopular opinions, but yeah, I just really like this film. I love how it uses the past again, but again, not as dumb as the second film did by having the Fallen or whatever, but it uses them in the moon landing, and it's so cool. The opening montage with the moon landing stuff is really fun. So yeah, overall, really fun film. I definitely recommend it. Not a lot of people are going to like it. A lot of people are going to say it's just as bad as the rest of them. I firmly disagree. It's easily my favorite of these movies and one of my favorite blockbusters in general. It just works really well for me, and I think I'll continue to watch it. Too bad Michael Bay's next movie is a fucking train wreck. We were doing so well. We were genuinely doing okay. And then Michael Bay was like, what if we just make a bad movie? So first off, this movie does not need to exist. The third Transformers movie ends off everything pretty well. There's a lot of great things for Sam's character, and everything just ends off feeling like the end of a trilogy. So why are there more? Obviously money. Did they bring back any of the original cast? No. Other than the Transformers, everybody here is new. And they didn't want to go and fully reboot it, I guess, because they still wanted to have ties to the previous films. And so instead of a reboot, we get this half hodgepodge reboot set post the third film, like it's starting to set up a sequel trilogy like Star Wars, and it just doesn't work. On top of that, the whole movie's just dog shit. I want to make an entire video on this movie at some point, but this movie just really, really pisses me off. There's so many different plots, and some of the plots actually have some decent potential. I'll go ahead and talk about the 3 different plots that I see the movie having. One of them is actually really cool. It's that the Autobots are hunted after the Battle of Chicago, and everybody hates them because they destroyed a bunch of places in Chicago, Illinois during the events of the 3rd movie. That's pretty cool. Moving on, the next one is that a lonely inventor finds a transformer and has to, help it while they're being, like, attacked by the military. That's also cool. The next one is dinosaurs, as Optimus Prime has to fight his creators. And then I guess I said 3, but there's a 4th one with a corporation creating Galvatron because they want to protect humans from any future Transformers threats. Then Megatron downloads himself into Galvatron, and, the corporation suffers because of that. Each of these things work well in isolation. You could probably pair a couple of them together, but altogether, this movie is a clumped film that cannot survive under its own mythology. And it's so frustrating for me to watch because all of these ideas on their own are pretty decent and entertaining, but they don't do anything for them, so the movie actually had potential, unlike the second one. On top of that, all of the dialogue is horrendous, all of the acting is bad, there's an entire segment and joke to describe statutory rape and why it's okay in this movie, and there's so much awful product placement. There's the scene with fucking, like, Bud Light, and man, I can't even talk about this film without just getting angry, and I don't know if it's worse than the second one. I genuinely don't. I think that they're probably just as bad, but this movie is so devoid of any creativity and any passion, and it's such a boring fucking film. This is another film that I saw when I was much younger, and I didn't like it then. 12-year-old me didn't like this movie. How badly do you have to screw up an action blockbuster to have a 12-year-old think your movie is bad? I don't know. I don't think there's any good moments in it. Like, the first, 30 minutes aren't awful as you get introduced to Mark Wahlberg's Cade Yeager, but, I can't talk about this film anymore. I have an entire review on my Letterboxd. If you guys want to check that out, it's in the description, and I can go into more depth there about the problems with this film, but it's really just such a broken movie that is indicative of everything wrong with the Transformers movies up until this point. Until the next movie was also everything wrong with the Transformers movies up until this point. Transformers: The Last Knight is the best, worst major action blockbuster that I have ever seen. It is almost as good as Justice League in that regard, and I was thoroughly entertained throughout the entire bloated runtime that this film has. When I first saw it, I was kind of just confused. And I can't honestly say that I'm not still confused. I think this film is wonderful in how broken it is. It's not it's not good, but it's not as racially charged and awful as the second one, and it's nowhere near as boring and creatively bankrupt as Age of Extinction. Actually, this is probably the most creative Transformers film. It has way too many ideas. It takes the blueprint of shoving the Transformers into every bit of history and then does it to every piece in one long exposition scene where we learn every world leader was a part of a group to hide Transformers' existence from the world, which is just ludicrous. The movie never takes itself seriously. I will not believe that this was not a parody created by Hollywood executives just to make money. It feels like a money laundering scheme at some point. I can't put my head around what happens. The plot is actually simple. Earth shatters, there's horns coming out that's signaling the apocalypse, and the only way to stop it is the Transformers heirloom that has been passed along for generations. Megatron's back, he wants to help destroy the world, so the Transformers have to try and stop him. It's genuinely not that complicated and hard to understand, so why is the actual movie so fucking confusing? Because the movie does not describe anything whatsoever. And this is all to say that I think everything that I've said so far has more depth than the actual film has. And that is just insane. Because this came out the same year as some really damn good films, and it's probably not even the worst film to come out that year, and there's even Anthony Hopkins is in it, and he has a butler robot who's an asshole who's like, move bitch, get out of my way, move bitch, get out of my way. And or what about the Suicide Squad ripoff, or the fact that the fucking aspect ratio changes throughout every fucking scene, even in the trailer? There are certain movies that just don't work at all and have so many moving parts that do not, as much as they try to, move in unison. And this is one of those movies. This is 2 hour and 34-minute husk of a film that could have had its budget used for saving the homeless or stopping world hunger, and instead we got this. Thank you, Michael Bay. You've delivered a true masterpiece.
What's a pipe dream if you ain't trying to do it? What's a heartbreak if you ain't crying, I'll do it. What's a sensitive...
The most insane thing about this video is I'm still not done talking about Transformers movies. Isn't that wild? Now... Bumblebee is the first Transformers movie since the 1986 animated one to not be directed by Michael Bay. It was directed by Travis Knight, who I believe also directed Kubo and the Two Strings, a movie which I really enjoy. So I was excited to go into this film and see what it was going to be like, especially because everything was changed, the designs were more in line with the cartoon designs, and honestly, at the end of the day, it's a pretty enjoyable time. The thing you have to understand about the Bumblebee movie is that it's not trying to be anything special. It is clearly trying to be an homage to a bunch of 80s films. There's things from E.T., there's even things from 90s films like The Iron Giant. It is not at all trying to be anything special. And you can say that that's an issue with it, and it should have tried to be something special. And you know, I might agree. That being said, it is so good at what it does that I'm not that upset. This movie is entertaining. All of the designs for the Transformers are fun. The action is great. The characters are entertaining. There's some moments here and there where it feels a little bit cheesy, but at the core of the movie, Haley Steinfeld's character is really, really enjoyable, and I like her romance. I like her relationship with Bumblebee. I like pretty much everything about that. There are some dumb things like John Cena and the military being involved in it, but at the heart of the film, I think it is a very entertaining movie. It's not my favorite Transformers movie, but I think it's still damn better than most of the movies I've talked about in today's video, and I think that at the end of the day, if they make more in this style, like I'm pretty sure they will, I think we'll end up with some pretty good Transformers movies down the line. Some of the biggest problems I think with this movie are, again, simultaneously, I don't think it needs to be anything special, but the fact that it isn't just kind of makes me not really care too much about anything going on. And I think that another issue really is that the Transformers aspect is such a not issue in the movie, to where Bumblebee is more or less just set dressing rather than an actual character. And hopefully they fix this in future films, and I get why they were doing that, because after like 5 Michael Bay movies you have to change something up, and I get that. And so at the end of the day, Bumblebee is an entertaining movie that I think people who hate the Michael Bay Transformers films will enjoy. Personally, I think I prefer the chaotic and action-packed nature of the first and third movie over this movie, but it's still an entertaining time, and I have no problems rewatching it or watching sequels. So there you have it. I've talked about every main Transformers movie, the good, the bad, and the really, really ugly, and the really, really funny ugly, and I honestly am tired of talking about these films. I don't ever want to talk about a Transformers movie ever again. I don't ever want to talk about a movie ever again. Of course, that's a joke. Honestly, as a whole, I think that the Transformers franchise is not good. However, I do think that there are some good movies within it. Of course, the first Transformers movie I like. I like Bumblebee. I like Dark of the Moon. I even like the 1986 movie. However, at its worst, the Transformers films are chaotic and heartless and soulless and don't do anything really right at all. And it makes sense why they get a lot of hate, and I can't say any of it's really unwarranted. I think the biggest thing I've learned with this rewatch is I just don't care about these movies as much as I thought I did. The ones I like, I will continue to watch over and over again, probably. I can easily watch the first and third movie again and again with no true issues. So I'll just do that because I like those movies. As for the movies I hate, I don't have to ever watch them again. I mean, maybe I'll get blackout drunk and watch The Last Night again just because that movie is insane. But at the end of the day, like, the Transformers movies aren't good, but they're not made to be good. They're made to make money, and that's not an excuse, but that's what they are. And some people can love them, some people can hate them. I'm firmly in the middle. of thinking that there's some good and there's some bad, but overall it is a net negative, I think, for the entire franchise, when 3 out of 5 of your main live action movies are garbage. So, but yeah, I had a really fun time talking about all of these movies, and I really like making these big videos like this. I have a couple more plans, so that'll be really fun, and I hope you all enjoyed it as well. Go ahead and leave in the comments down below your thoughts on the Transformers movies. Do you hate them all? Do you love them all? Do you love some? Do you hate some? I'm really interested to hear your thoughts. And as always, subscribe for more content like this, and check out my playlist of JayTheZoomster uploads from 2020. I've got a lot of other great videos in there. I hope to see you all in my next video.